Get started so that we can be respectful of everyone's time. So first of all, thank you everyone for being here. Good to see your faces. Hopefully we will get to be in person soon. So just sort of a reminder for those who are new to this committee, it's comprised of our current board leadership, including myself and the vice chair, our committee chairs, and this year we've got Jill Gallardo with Lunar, and I'm looking at who else. We have Jill
on transportation.
Darren on transportation. We've got Sean Harris, who's the CalCog representative, and there's somebody else.
Director Saragosa with the policy committee.
So Michael, we don't see Michael right now. So, and then our former board chairs. So Jay Chenier, Lucas, Tom, and David.
Big collection of has-beens.
Oh no, you are still very much needed, especially with our SACOG board, because we have 12 new members, right? And we'll have a conversation about that. So really our role is to meet 3 times a year, and it's to oversee the strategic direction of the agency, engaging in everything from work plans to major plan efforts like long-range transportation plan, and engaging our board members. So let's start with a pledge. And Darren, if you wouldn't mind leading the pledge for us, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Gore. If y'all just rise where you are, hand over heart. Oh, good. We got a flag. Ready? Pledge. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
To the flag
of the
United States of
America.
The republic
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God,
under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice
for all. Thank you. All right. And clerk, if you could please go ahead and do the roll call.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Just a couple of housekeeping reminders before I begin. Just a reminder that our meeting, as always, is being recorded and will be posted on SACOG's website for future viewing. It can also be viewed live by members of the public. For our board members, if you would like to make a comment or if you have a question, we would ask that you use the raise hand feature within Zoom so that we can keep track of your comments. And then members of the public who are participating by phone, if you'd like to request to make a comment, you can press *9. Director Frericks?
Here.
Gallardo?
Here.
Harris?
Here.
Sander?
Here.
Zaragoza? I'll let the record show that he is here. I see him. He just might be having a mute button issue. Saylor?
Here.
Chenier?
Here.
Dallard?
Here.
Soon?
Here.
Vice Chair Jennings is absent, and Chair Gore.
Here. Great, thank you, Lynette. So we'll move on to public communication. It's the opportunity for anybody in the public to make a comment on an item that's not on our agenda. So we'll open that up. Raise your hand. Any public comment? Don't see any. All right, close public comment, and we'll move on to our first item, which is our path forward, and it's the Prosperity Strategy Work Plan for 2021. And I think on our agenda, it says about 30 minutes. I think what I'd like to do is probably expand it to about 45. We have 45 minutes for this item, 45 minutes for the second item, and then that'll keep us at the 90-minute mark for our meeting. So with that, I know that SACOG has worked really hard with the Metro Chamber, with GSAC, with Valley Vision, and the Asian Chamber of Commerce in the development of this economic prosperity strategy. And I know we're joined by Amanda Blackwood, who is the CEO of the SAC Metro Chamber. Amanda, it's great to have you. And so James, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Sure, thanks, Chair Gore. And I know that many of you as returning SACOG board veterans have heard this before, but just to tee this up a little bit from your for your first strategic planning committee meeting of the year. Back in 2018, we partnered with the Chamber and GSEC and Valley Vision and the Asian Chamber, and we brought the Brookings Institution to town, and we basically had them do an analysis of our economy, especially looking at kind of our key metrics and our tradable sectors in particular. In many ways, think of Brookings as we went to see the doctor, and the doctor said, you know, some of your numbers look pretty good, but you might have some underlying health conditions that are not presenting themselves right now. And you got to pay attention to those. Namely, those are not as much strength in sectors that create wealth, sectors that like manufacturing, export, basically. You can make stuff here and export it rather than say a service sector economy. So they did their analysis in 2018, and the result was that we came together, as Amanda will tell you shortly. And this is really important. I want to put an emphasis on this, how important this is, I believe, for us as SACOG, all of you as local government and elected officials, to be arm in arm with the business community to understand how we can work together to support an economic strategy for this region that really is forward-looking, that is rooted in the sort of innovation, inclusion, investment categories. And we developed a plan. We released it last year, and we now have a work plan, a very specific work plan for the year ahead. And with further ado, I wanted to bring Amanda on board to say a few things. Thanks.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to see all these familiar faces and a couple of new folks too. So thank you, and just Bonnie, congratulations for your chairship and you know, having all of you here. It's just it's a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you. So I'll keep it rather brief and give you this footnote that anything that we cover today, if you want to dig more into it, there is a microsite. You can go to theprosperitystrategy.org and you'll see all the in-depth, all the data, all the, you know, research, all that good stuff. So instead of putting a bunch of slides up for you here, I just wanted to kind of give you some high level, but it's all there and you can read anything that we're going to talk about. As James communicated, right back in 2018, brought Brookings in to do this work, but many of you have been doing this work for a long time in this region. Next Economy, Blueprint prior to that. So think of, you know, I just want to say what the prosperity strategy is and what it isn't. You know, what it is a continuation of that work with further refinement based on data and analysis in the lens of what our economy looks like now for the next 5, for the next 10, for the next 15 years. And we're going to talk a lot about race, equity, how that weaves into this plan, and why that was really intentional. So again, any of the data, anything that you want to see, by all means, go to that microsite and you'll see why. But really in 2018, we had a really robust dialogue about, we will be, if not already, and many of your communities already are, particularly in the 18 to 35-year-old demographic, but a majority minority community, and what that means economically. And that there are certain decisions that we make on how we grow, that having that lens of inclusiveness and really talking about the impacts that gender, that race, that all those things have on economic strategy, that yes, there's a moral conversation and there's an economic conversation. And as our community becomes increasingly diverse, that's the lens by which we have to look when we make really strategic decisions using very finite resources. And I know that all of you have that challenge, that we want to be all things. We want every, you know, citizen, every constituent that we represent to feel fully engaged, and that we hear you, and that we're creating a community that you feel that you can thrive in. And at the same time, we have the very real reality that resources are finite. And you all as elected leaders have to make really, really difficult decisions. So when Brookings came in, right, they kind of opened the can on this and said, here's the lens by which we're going to look at these things. And we want to do a stress test on you, exactly as James said. Here's what's working. Here's your areas of greatest opportunity. So the thing I also want to say about prosperity strategy is not a point-by-point guide on how you create or how any of you would lead your communities. It's a very 30,000 foot view that says, if you guys doubled down on 3 key industries, these would be the clusters that are going to give you the greatest bang for your buck, your greatest chance at overall economic growth for your region. And they really looked at that big picture, knowing, right, I represent 22 cities, 6 counties too, and my folks are very broad. I've got rural folks, suburban folks, urban folks, that small restaurant downtown to that big farm, you know, that's out in Yuba City. So I very much understand having dialogue about regionally, how might we activate our best assets so that the region can grow as inclusively as we can, rising all boats, and that at the end, you know, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, we are having conversations about continuous growth and not always having to fill the gap of those that have been historically left behind. So I just want to say that to say, this is not a plan that says in Elk Grove, you should be doing this. In Rancho Cordova, you should be doing this. It's a conversation about, here are 6 strategies, 3 industry related, 3 infrastructure related, foundational related, that if you can keep these things in mind as you're making decisions, strategic decisions, using the finite resources that you have, the more we align activity in these lanes, the greatest chance that we have for true regional economic growth. So with that said, I'm just going to give you kind of a top line. Again, check out the website. You can see all the detail. But really the 3 big growth industries that they identified for us, which meant this is something we already have in spades. It's a natural asset. We're not trying to be anybody that we're not. We're not looking at another region and going, well, Hollywood's doing this and Nashville's doing this, we should be doing that. It was more of a, look, here's what's already magical, amazing momentum in your communities. Here are the 3 areas that if you pull these resources together, you could really activate. The first is food, ag, health innovation, right? So yes, it's food production. Yes, it's manufacturing, but it's really thinking even further as the test bed in this region for bioscience innovation, for seed technology, for water technology, finite water all over the world, right? We really have this natural ability to be a leader, a global leader in the technology side of the food and ag industry. So by all means, yes, we manufacture food and we want to ship it all over the world. And we can export our technology and how we're doing that in innovative ways in the state of California, where we have, you know, climate change very top of mind, and we're in a super, super highly regulated environment. So if California can do it, you can export it all over the world. So thinking about food, ag, health innovation. The second is life science. Very, very similar, right? You have huge institutions. You've got a test bed here. You've got bioscience innovation. You've got a state that is close to technology, that does business worldwide, 5th largest economy. How might we really double down on the life science cluster as well to create technology information that we can export out of the region that isn't just bound by, you know, widgets and things that we could produce. And the third is future mobility, which I know is near and dear to all of your hearts. And it's that concept of, yes, you know, California Mobility Center, it's a great project. It's a great, you know, physical manifestation of being able to move these things forward. But just the same as with an Aggie Square, we really, in the 5th largest economy, in the capital of California, have the ability to shape policy globally, have the ability to shape industry globally when we really lean all the way into what future mobility looks like. So big picture, right? Those are the industry clusters. And I can imagine in your mind right now, you already know, you know your jurisdiction better than anybody else. You know the momentum that is already in your cities, counties, districts, where you know there are supply chains in those industries. And success would look like, wow, if we could connect those dots on what this manufacturer is doing in Woodland to what this, you know, logistics center is doing in Rancho, to what this, you know, water treatment plant's doing in Yolo. And I look to you, right, as those leaders that just come together to share information and connect those dots. You know what your folks are doing. And the more that we can connect dots, the more that we can really regionally approach how might we lift up what each other are doing. That's where we have the ability to, you know, bring in a UC Davis and bring in institutions and activate those big global powerhouses. But activate the specialized knowledge that you have of your city, your region, and knowing what your capacities are. The other 3, right? So 6 total strategies, 3 were industry, 3 are foundational or a way of thinking. So the other 3 key strategies are physical infrastructure, right? Which I know is also near and dear to you. You're making decisions every day about housing, about transportation, about what ordinances are going to encourage growth, what ordinances may unintentionally not encourage growth, but how might we do that in a, in a climate change environment in which we have, mandates and things that we have to meet. So thinking about the housing, the roads, the parks, the infrastructure that we create that might activate those 3 industry clusters the most is what Brookings would tell us is really the wisest strategic use of our finite dollars. Right. The second is the workforce system. So yeah, say now we got buildings, we got roads, we got broadband, infrastructure's there. What about the people? So it's, again, being very mindful that our finite workforce development dollars are going to train, to rejob, right? You all know, you're feeling it. We've got a massive group of people now in retail and hospitality that find themselves out of a job, and they can either wait on assistance or navigating with the EDD until somehow another restaurant opens back up and they're back in, or we can start to upskill into these high growth clusters, which not only activate these economically for those, business lines and those industries to thrive, but really give people the opportunity to have high wage jobs that build generational wealth. So again, when you're looking at inclusion, when you're looking at workforce, you got to have real conversations that there are folks that have been historically disadvantaged when it comes to competing for these kinds of jobs. And as we make workforce decisions, we could train a bunch of people to go into our growth clusters, to get into life science, to lean into advanced mobility, or we can train people to do jobs that they're going to bounce and, go to Austin, go to Portland, going to leave our state, and then we've trained another state very well, but we weren't able to retain any of those people in our own market or create generational wealth for your constituents now. So again, it's just that mindfulness that we can't train everybody to do everything, but man, if we really leaned into our training programs on these 3 growth clusters, we would have an exceptional workforce that's ready to not only meet the current need, but also, as Barry will share with you, he's got site selectors coming in looking. They don't want to hear about the people you're going to train if they come. They want to hear about the 1,500 people that are already here, that are Salesforce ready, that are ready to roll. They just need the industry to come in and hire them. So in the final, the 6th, which is the nearest and dearest to me, is we're in California, right? It is not the most business friendly of states. And yet we are the 5th largest economy in the world and have abundant opportunity. So I can't necessarily create the same business climate that the South or a Texas or another state or even Nevada may be willing to do. But man, if we came together, we could create the most business friendly climate in the state of California. And we have the advantage of being at the capital, right? So folks still want to come here, right? We've got, yes, some businesses have left the state. I can't solve all of those problems, but we can have this group band together to really create an open door to business and let them know if you want to come to California, if you want to stay in California, all love to our other regions, but check out the capital region, before you say, I'm out of here. I'm going across state lines. So those are the big picture kind of ways of approaching it that, the things I'd leave you with are double down on what we are already exceptional at. These are our assets. Each of you have assets in your community already that touch these 3 growth industries. Connecting those dots is huge. And that's something we can do through dialogue. Creating that infrastructure are the choices, the strategic choices you'll make in this body, as well as, in your individual roles, in your cities, counties, and the other things that you're doing, your larger state boards, all those choices that you're making, that with our finite resources, does this housing choice move us towards that advanced economy? Or, might we find ourselves in a parochial way of thinking that may meet a small short-term need, but is not necessarily going to position us long-term for the future? And those are the seeds, right, that we ask that you just think about as you kind of navigate through. So a few points I'd leave that are a little bit more finite crystallized that we're working to activate that work plan, working very closely with SACOG, Asian Chamber, Valley Vision, and Greater Sacramento Economic Council that I would leave you to ponder. The first is transportation. And just in a very finite way, we now know that where people live, where they drive, is changing. This is changing in a really new way. And we already knew, people are going to drive cars. We're a car culture. It's what it is. And at the same time, how might we lean into those innovative ways of doing transportation, particularly with people continuing to work remote? And it's kind of a whole new framework to think about how we move people and goods when you may live where you work, you may live wildly not where you work, right? We may have folks that are camped out in, where they're working in Roseville, but their company's in Rancho, right? So they're not making that drive anymore. So what does that mean? At the same time, people still move things via vehicle. So as we lean into electrification of mobility, that more traditional mobility sources, these are decisions that you get to make on creating an environment that fosters more innovation or creating an environment that maybe unintentionally disincentivizes that kind of innovation. So that's a seed that I'd lead you with as you ponder. Just a question to ask yourself, is it a continuation of the traditional that gives us platform for the future? Or might we think of it, in a new way? I'd give a huge shout out to the SACOG Civic Lab work. I think that's been, those pilots are such an interesting way for us to see what is possible without a huge outlay of capital, right? You don't have to commit to everything. We all went remote work boldly and, not really with any of us choosing to do that. So we do know that we can do things wildly different than we were previously doing them. And at the same time, these are long-term decisions. So thinking about how your young professionals want to live and work, how they want to get around versus we have an aging population, right? They're living longer, how they're going to get around, the movement of people facilitates economic activity. So if everyone's kind of sitting at home and doing everything on Amazon, that doesn't do us any good locally, right? And we're all feeling that, and our brick and mortar are feeling it. But if we can make those decisions that get people out and about in a safe way, in an environmentally conscious way, so that we can meet goals that we all know that we have to meet, that's a way that we can, a framework by which we can think about it differently. And again, I would just give you that, being inclusive in how we're thinking also causes us to check our own biases, because we all know our experience. But the experience of someone in their 70s may be wildly different than someone, who's just trying to get to high school and everything in between. And you've got the fun adventure of holding space, for all of those people that live where you lead. So I would give that example there. Also, where we're going to really want to partner with you all is practically, right? Do we have ordinances in place that encourage innovation? Do we have rules in place that encourage innovation? Or are we unintentionally discouraging it? Maybe we're trying to meet this need over here, but we're not really thinking about it. The second is housing, right? We all know that we don't have enough. And when we talk about housing type, I know SACOG has done an incredible job, and we'll share with you all of the data there. Encourage you to continue to have dialogue with the chamber on this. This is a key policy priority for us this year. But it's that same concept of, are we creating an environment with innovative housing? Are we encouraging density? Knowing, I feel ya. I know. I sit through those council meetings, those, the public calls, and I know that you're trying to balance and you're trying to create space for, a 4,000 square foot home, single family home, and there's demand for that. While there's also demand for 600 square foot micro units in urban infill environments, and they have their own unique challenges to build. And you're getting it from every direction. But the bottom line is, we know we need more housing. We know that we need more density. We've got to be able to find a way to do that in creative ways that meet the needs of our community and that are sensitive to those needs. But again, I would say it from that place of inclusion, that when we're looking at our 18 to 35-year-old demographic, overwhelmingly, your young talent is telling you they want that kind of, more compact. I can ride my bike. I can live where I'm at. My utilities are low, while you're trying to balance that same, folks coming from the Bay Area and they've got 3 kids and they're really looking for that, I want a 3,500 square foot house, and we're balancing all of those things. So I would just say that's another lens to really, as you're making decisions on finite resources, Are we creating an environment through incentives? Are we creating an environment through our permitting, through our ordinance process that encourages that kind of dense housing that we know that we need, and I'm unintentionally discouraging it, but just not being mindful that that is a need. I'd give a shout out again on the Green Means Go initiative. And I know SACOG did a massive amount of effort on that last year. We were very privileged to partner on that, but embracing things like, again, it's that if you build it, we will come. It's just creating that environment of that green zone environment that if you make that pledge, if you create those kind of policies, it opens us up to some state support that can help underwrite some of the heavy burden that is the cost that it is to do infill. So again, right, that's an initiative I'd encourage you to continue to think about, continue to have dialogue about. But we know we need more. We know we don't have enough, and we need all types. But we also really need to see what we could do to encourage that density in our suburbs as well. In that reuse of building. I know it's going to be an interesting dialogue with downtown Sacramento on all of these state buildings maybe being used, maybe not, and a lot of dialogue about how might we convert those to housing. Our suburbs are having the same dialogue. We've got aging retail strips. How can we create some kind of mixed use, right? So, and those things aren't easy. Those aren't easy. You pull one string and it makes sense, and then it kind of causes some unintended consequence over here. So that's what I'd leave you with housing. And then very finally is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And as I said at the top of the conversation, yes, it is a moral conversation. And yes, it is an economic imperative. And the win-win, right, of that is wherever you're at, however you want to look at the issue of creating space for everybody to engage in the economy, it's the right thing to do. It's the economically prudent thing to do. It's what we're going to have to do to get through this recovery, but it requires intention and dialogue. And from a chamber hat, some of you may have seen Dave Roten, CEO of Safe Credit Union, is our board chair this year. Just announced, I think, in the Business Journal this morning, we're partnering on a program with MTrain that's essentially an analysis of your organization, of your community on, how are you meeting the needs from a diversity, inclusion, and belonging standpoint. And we're doing it internally. So I'd encourage all of you too, if you want to look at any of that, you can take a look at metrochamber.org, our commitment to change. And it's our internal commitment on the things we can control. That really my lane is economic inclusion. I mean, I represent business, and it's not one kind of business, not one kind is better than another, right? We just want everybody to be able to engage in the economy and be productive, and, personally, to feel that they are a part of their community and that there is a spot at the table for them. That if you want to open a small business, you want to hire 1,000 people, you want to export to 15 markets, we're here for you. We've got your back. So to create that space with a very diverse community requires open dialogue about issues that are very real. And we know that, some folks have been advantaged and some have not. And an idea that I would maybe leave you with is everyone has their struggles, right? Everyone has had their own individual life story. We have all faced our own barriers, but it's kind of that, to put it in a Super Bowl metaphor, as of late, is are you starting at the 50-yard line or are you back at the end zone on the other side? Everyone's got the opportunity for the touchdown, right? This is America. We've got opportunity, but some folks may start a little ahead of others. And to be real about that, to have dialogue about that as we make decisions is important. And it causes us to check our own bias. And there's many traditional decisions that we've made, frankly, because everybody at the table had a shared experience. And as we have more diversity in conversation, more diverse representation, we just want to be mindful that not everybody has the same, the door's not open as far for everybody. And I think we would all agree that our communities are most successful when every single person has the ability to participate at the level that they possibly can. So those are kind of my big pictures. Obviously, there's a lot in there too with the work plan. Homelessness is very real. There are a variety of other issues that we're all tackling, but what I'd leave you with is, as a mentor told me, you can have it all, just not all at once. And I think we all feel that we want to create these idyllic communities. It's why you do the incredibly hard work that you do. And our resources are finite in time, in money, and what we could do. So if we could get in the mindset of how might the decision I make today advance these clusters, How might my decision connect, regional assets? How might I reach out to my partners in other cities and counties and have dialogue about these things? Then we're all going to be rowing in the same direction. It's going to get us through this, recovery as quickly as we can. And, my goal 10 years from now is we're looking back and having a conversation about, wow, look what we did. We truly are the global leader in these clusters. Wow, everybody can get around. Wow, everyone is housed. I think that's success. And if we can kind of have the discipline to stick in these lanes, we have the greatest chance of succeeding. And, it takes discipline and it's hard work, but we're in great company, and I'm very confident that we're going to be able to do that.
Thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate your overview and sticking to the highlights, but really encouraging us to use these as we move forward, looking at the future. How do we actually be looking towards the future with these areas in mind? Really, really helpful. Questions from any of our directors? It looks like Darren has raised his hand. Go ahead, Darren.
Thanks, Chair Gore. Amanda, it's so good to see you again. Yeah, it's been so long. And I just, first I want to say, it's just so refreshing and great to see how passionate you are still about all of this since the first day we met back in DC, where we almost died of thirst looking for water. You remember? But I wanted to ask because, as obviously you're talking to a bunch of policymakers here, and as we do all these things going forward, even if we're successful in that regard, implementation remains a challenge. And so I'm just wondering, in your role at the chamber, what have you seen in terms of, private sector willing to, step in and implement policies that we put forth?
So it's a great question. I appreciate that. I fondly remember digging in the trash for the cell phone.
Yes.
How far we have come. So I'll answer in two ways. So chamber hat, and all of you can look our 4-point business promise, right? We have 4 key policy priorities that we're narrowing down on. So we want to give you tools. So what you're going to see come out of the chamber this year, and we want to do that absolutely in partnership and in dialogue with you, is from a housing standpoint, here's kind of a Reader's Digest on policies that encourage this kind of growth and policies that may discourage this kind of growth, right? So we want to get some tools in your hands that are going to help you from an industry perspective know this kind of incentive, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. This kind of thing, appreciate the thought, that doesn't do me any good, right? And just having practical dialogue. So a couple things will come out. You'll see one on housing. You'll see one on broadband expansion. You'll see one on retaining young professional talent. So we want to get those toolkits in your hand. But the second is really, and why I'm so blessed to be with you today, is open door to dialogue. So no, a service perhaps that we can always provide, and some folks take us up on it and some don't, are if you've got an idea of a thing that you want to test in a safe space and get some industry feedback in real time, we are happy to facilitate big picture town hall. You want 50 folks on there, or you want 2 developers to tell you, hey, I do urban infill, I do suburban projects. Let's give you some perspective on how this affects us. So no, our partners, Jay's an amazing ally in this. Our partners at the city of Sacramento do it frequently, that we've got an idea. Could you pull together some restaurateurs so we can run it by them and see how it feels? Or, hey, we've got this thing on transportation, but we're getting some pushback. Oh, this might actually affect seniors in a way that we didn't want. Could you get Eschaton on here to come talk? So no, as a convener, right? Chamber, I do 3 things. I'm an advocate, I'm a convener, and I provide boots on the ground technical assistance. So wherever we could be of service for you to just create space to have conversation before you get 75 angry phone calls, on a hearing, let us know. And I can't always promise, but you at least can kind of get dialogue. At the same time, if you know that you have some industry folks that seem to be kind of off the rails, or, opposing every single thing that you try to do, let me know what I can do to facilitate dialogue. And we always try to create that space. I think you've all heard me say, elected office is maybe the hardest possible job you could do. Running for office is a brutal marathon, and being in it, what you guys do is just beyond, and the pressures on you are immense. So whatever we could do to create space to have understanding, even if they don't like what you chose, right? They at least know why. And you now have space. I mean, we're in the marathon here. We're here for the long term. So these kind of short term, something pops up on agenda and everybody blows up and gets all freaked out. We got to move on, because there's going to be another problem 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, that if we collectively share information and dialogue, we're all going to be so much stronger than these kind of, you know, finite short-term battles. So anyway, point of that story is, let us know how we can build bridges. And we want to get those functional toolkits in your hands.
Thanks, Amanda, and really appreciate you reminding us, right, that Metro Chamber can assist us in a lot of different ways. Director Chenier, I think you had a question.
Sure, a couple things real quick. So Amanda, thanks for being here and reminding us all what we're supposed to be doing. That's always good. One, just a small thing. I understand we have a car culture. I'm not giving up on public transportation, and I know that language is really important about how we talk about these things. And so I know, and with a number of people who are on this call, we'll be back at it again for 2022 to get the transportation systems that I think our economy needs, much less the individuals and young people. So that's one piece. I also think, as an aside almost, you know, going through what we're going through with Aggie Square and trying to get that. I mean, I think this will be certainly the biggest economic development project that I've been involved with, probably for the last 20 years. It'd be good to do kind of a case study as we go of what worked and what hasn't worked, so that as we maybe get after another project like this, whatever region it's in, whoever's county it's in, we can learn from some of the lessons that we've taken. I just want to emphasize one other thing, and it's particularly pertinent, certainly for the city and what we're going through these days, is thinking through culture. You know, and how do we sequence trying to revive a culture, get a culture in our region that is one of collaboration, and that we can move forward. I mean, we have so many examples, and you know, the city is involved in things good and bad. So I think we're responsible as well. But thinking about, before we get to some of these sectors, if we don't have the right culture going in, we're going to fail in the long term, I think. So, and you kind of mentioned it, and you mentioned it in the terms of, you know, developers looking at something or the city looking at something. I think kind of an all-out initiative that envelops a lot of the social justice work that you discussed, importantly, that many of us are already doing, that SACOG has undertaken, and kind of embedding that into even a larger discussion about the culture of our entire region and how we work together, because we're going in the wrong direction on a lot of this stuff, and that will not lead to success for us. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Did you want to respond? Yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, and I completely agree. You know, something that we talk about a lot, and it's kind of in that sixth tier of, you know, create this business friendly environment, is culture, and particularly just a culture of yes, right? How might we come from a culture of yes instead of no first? How might we do that? How might that project come to fruition? How might we, you know, yes, maybe there weren't career pathways in the past into this, but we're here now, right? So I would very much echo that. I know that we talk about that a lot, and I know, you know, you all have to navigate, you know, your own interesting cultures within, you know, where you are at too. But big picture, if we can come from a place of all things are possible, maybe we just haven't figured it out yet, is at least the mind space to think about innovative approaches, new approaches. Because Jay, you're absolutely correct, in particular to public transportation as well. It's even the thinking of built-in rail line versus electric bus, right? There are different ways to think about how we do it. And if we can come from a place of, well, yeah, it's possible, we just haven't figured it all out yet, is extremely important to approach these problems so that we can even be open to ideas that we haven't even thought of. And particularly as we bring in more diverse perspectives, that person's experience may just be wildly, wildly different than yours. So to create it, and maybe the best thing you ever heard, you didn't know, you never experienced that, you didn't know. It's like when people travel all over the world and come back and say, hey, do you know in Spain they have this kind of work day? Like, we should think about that. So anyway, I just bring up that point that diversity and perspective will allow us to problem solve in a completely different way, but we can't even get to that dialogue if we don't create a foundation of belonging to even solicit the feedback, right? And if you have felt like you've been shut out for a really long time, it's difficult to muster the courage again and again and again to say, well, from my end of the spectrum, let me tell you what my experience is. That's why that, culture of belonging as leaders to set that table and to live it is so critically important, so that folks feel that they can really engage in dialogue in a real and meaningful way. And it's not lip service, and it's not checking a box, and it's not, well, we did the round table. We asked you, right? It's got to be authentic, and it's got to be ongoing. And we have to know, particularly for folks that have felt left out, that outreach may take a really long time to build a culture of trust and collaboration.
And Amanda, the only thing I would ask, you have one great tool. Hopefully we'll get back to doing study missions, but I would take the study missions to another level around all of what you've just talked about and come back from that with a plan. I would say study mission / retreat for regional leadership. It's what we learn and what we do with it.
Agreed. 2022.
Let's see, any other questions from directors? Amanda, I had one quick question, and you had spoken a little bit about housing, right? And for us, we will be a lot about housing this year and just how important it is, right? We don't have enough, we need more, we need diverse housing. Can you just comment on what you think the Metro Chamber might be able to do to assist us in, as we work through this process, not only this year, but as we move forward, trying to address this critical need?
Fantastic question. So I'll go back and give the two I gave before, but then a third. One is obviously this toolkit, right? This is a best practice, and we're working with the developers, urban infill developers, large, single family home developers, as well as these kinds of rules, these kinds of ordinances, these kinds of incentives encourage this kind of thing. So that just gives you something to ponder, right? Do it or don't. Obviously you've got a lot of things on your plate, but it will at least give you a playbook of these kinds of things seem to encourage this kind of building. So that's one. Two is lean on us wherever we can to convene dialogue all day long. So if you want to talk about it, if you want to get feedback on it, if you've got an idea of something you want to try and you want to know how industry is going to respond, please. And I'll say we have a really strong relationship with labor as well. So, again, in the spirit of ongoing dialogue and problem solving, whatever we could do to just be a convener of dialogue. But the third is really where I can flex my advocate muscles is I know that you have to make hard decisions. And I know that not every neighborhood and not everybody likes everything you have to do. So why the prosperity strategy is so important is it's a framework that is evidence-based that we know will encourage the economic growth that we need. And when you go out on a limb and you make those hard decisions that align with that strategy, you've got a very vocal advocate that has your back, that is going to let folks understand these kinds of decisions advance inclusive economic development. And therefore we stand firmly behind you in your current decision-making process, in your, bid to stay in your seats. I mean, it's all very real. So, I know that the decisions are difficult, and you're doing your job right when half the people are happy and half the people aren't happy. I mean, it is what it is. It's difficult, hard stuff. So know that the decisions that you make that align with the strategy, I get the free rein to say these are the right economic decisions, and we can very vocally have your back on that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that. I think I have to open it up to the public for any public comment. So I want to make sure I do that in case there's any questions from anybody in the public. They can raise their hand and we're looking, and Lynette will probably tell me, nope, I don't see anybody raising their hand. Great. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the work that you've done, the way the Metro Chamber is collaborating with SACOG, Valley Vision, GSAC, the Asian Chamber. It's really heartening to see these groups working together. I read through the plan and the strategy last night and looked at how it's really great seeing that we've got different groups working on different initiatives, but to benefit the whole, right? And I think, right, we focus on our strengths. SACOG can focus on our strengths, but we can support one another. And I really appreciate the reminder that we've got this plan. And as I look at housing in my jurisdiction or projects that might have a little bit of a challenge to a lot for buy-in in the community, that we can point back to, we're really looking at how to make our community successful, not just economically, but economically so it's successful all the way around, right? Housing, jobs, a great place to live, resources, etc. Thank you for your work on this. Thank you for spending your time with us today. And James, did you want to add anything before we let Amanda go back to the rest of her, I'm sure, very busy day?
I think you, Chair Gore, you summed it up pretty well. Can you hear me okay, by the way? I was having some internet issues. Oh, good. I hope somebody can fix the broadband sometime soon as part of a larger regional strategy. No, I just really to echo what you just said, which is for those of you that have followed along the prosperity strategy and the release of that last year, was it last year? The year before, it was 12 to 18 months. We released that prosperity strategy, and it was really important to us and leaders like Amanda not to have it just be sort of a, hey, here's what y'all should do. Go, good luck, right? So you got a work plan, and I'm glad you read through that last night, Chair Gore. We are trying to hold ourselves accountable to projects and programs and initiatives on an annual, ongoing way. And also when, as Amanda has said today, when you all think about Civic Lab and innovative mobility, and you think about housing and Green Means Go, understand that it is also part of a regional economic strategy that, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I am proud of it because the relationship between our COG and our local governments and the business community and the civic leaders in this region is absolutely critical. We cannot do this in silos or alone. So we've spent a lot of time on that. Spent a lot of time on having an annual work plan, and just my thanks to Amanda and her team at the Chamber for just being great partners.
Absolutely.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Amanda. You're welcome to listen, but probably not too exciting for you, and we'll let you get back to your day.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much, Chair Gore. Thank you for giving me the space and time. And again, anybody, if you want to read that, prosperitystrategy.org, you can find any of our stuff, Metro Chamber, and just read anytime we can be of service, right? No, it's a phone call away. It's a text away. It's so easy to get together now with the Zoom. So, just throwing together something to have dialogue, whatever we can do to be of service, it's our pleasure.
That's great. Thanks so much.
Take care.
All right, everyone, let's move to our next item. And we want to talk a little bit about board engagement for this next year, 2021. As we all know, we've got 12 new directors. That is terrific. But I really want to talk about how we actually engage with them. What are the things that we need to do as a board to better engage with them and actually work even better together this next year. So I wanted to have us brainstorm a little bit, talk a little bit about your ideas. We might talk about, should we hold a retreat this summer? What type of lunch and learn types of things do we want to do? How can we make sure that this year our time is well spent so that we can be productive and continue to advance the work that we have? So with that, I'm going to turn over to James to present a little bit more, and then we can discuss further.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Gore. I think, given all of you are veterans, I think the memo should sort of make sense. And but I would just kind of help you frame the conversation by saying, since I've joined as your executive director 4 years ago, it has been really important to me to get the board to really engage and own the work of SACOG. And I hope that's been clear. Green Means Go is a great example. And some of you have been on some calls recently with some of our state legislators really pitching Green Means Go, what it means for your local jurisdictions, right? Really owning green zones and infill development, meeting state goals, but on local terms, right? This kind of bottom up effort. And I have to say those meetings where we have board members engaging with our state legislators are just fantastic. And we can't do that and be successful just as staff. So that's just sort of one example. And, Chair Gore, I appreciate the attention you've paid so far to our dozen new board members, right? And try to figure out how do we welcome them? How do we engage them? How do we make sure we're not leaving them behind with all of the complexities of our work, but bring them far along and really have the board, even in a remote setting, hopefully we're not too much longer, really roll up its sleeves, sink its teeth into the work, right? Some of the discussions like we had this morning at our Policy and Innovation Committee. So there's some tactics in the memo, board workshops, board luncheons, board retreat, but you should not constrain yourself to those. I think the question that Chair Gore wanted to set up for this afternoon is really how do we engage this year's board in our work? So I'll open it up for the rest of you.
So let's have a dialogue. Let's have a conversation. And we've got veterans, and you've seen things that have worked and haven't worked, and would appreciate your thoughts too. So I see Director Saylor. You want to go ahead and start it off?
Yes, thank you very much, Connie, for the opportunity. I think this is an important topic for us. One of the things over the years that seems to me to be an issue for bringing people in is for us to understand our position as a local jurisdiction representative in the larger context of the region. So one of the things that we've done in the past, we've had field trips where we've gone to different parts of the region with a focus on themes, but also just to learn about the farther reaches of places. So we've gone on farm tours or other kinds of shared experiences where we come together. Since we're not doing that now, I think it still might be, I think it would be interesting to somehow find ways to profile different jurisdictions or sub-regions within the 6-county region and have the new members be participants in some of the telling of the story. And as we talk and have them express what's important in their jurisdiction and their sub-region, because it's not just one city or one county, it's also what are the bits and what are the connecting tissue, what's the connecting tissue between Rancho Cordova and Folsom or some of the other sub-regional elements that we've got. So having our members, especially new members, tell the story of their sub-region, and then having us all have the opportunity to do some learning together. That could be subjects of some micro lunches or workshops or so forth. So that's in some way teasing out that idea of what is our region, how does our local jurisdiction or sub-region connect to it, and what's our shared story.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that suggestion, especially the creative way, right? Because we aren't able right now to go out and visit in person. So appreciate that suggestion, Don. Thank you. Director Stollard?
I just wanted to mention, and it came up this morning at Policy and Innovation, how important the roster is that Lynette will be getting out to all of us. And I urged the members this morning to put your cell phones on there. I mean, you're not hiding anything from your colleagues. Make it easy for us to reach you. And let's just promote intercommunication among the board members. We do it with our own council because we have to, and our relative board supervisors, but on the SACOG, we need to have a culture of we consult each other, because we know that there are lots of strengths among our membership and sometimes strengths we don't have and experiences we don't have. So that's how we can serve each other, is by being accessible and actually following through with reliance and social too. We're people. We have fun if we enjoy each other. What a difference it makes. And we'll be more willing to do the harder things that need to be done if we're operating from a position of friendships.
Thank you. Great point, Tom. Director Sin.
Thank you, Chair Gore. I'm one of the newer members on here from this committee, but what seemed to work for me, or I thought was working well, was when we had those retreats and going to visit other communities throughout the nation. And similar, to cap, it enabled us to build strong relations with one another. I think that's, James, that's where we came, that group that year going to Seattle and such, we came up with the next gen transit idea. I mean, to me, like building those relationships, emphasizing on what Tom just said, that opportunity to do that, I think goes a long way in having us build those personal relationships and being able to share with one another. So I just say that, so those retreats and opportunities for us to engage with one another.
And to follow up on that, Darren, really good point, right? Because as Tom said, that relationships are what, when I know that somebody in a different jurisdiction has a similar issue, I can reach out, we can collaborate, we can talk, I can get input, I can have somebody provide support. And how do we do that? And I think in the short term, we can do Zooms, et cetera. And as should we look at in the fall when we anticipate things opening up more with the vaccination and the case rates going down, should we look at doing some sort of board retreat or offsite type of event where it allows us to learn and connect with one another, sort of a twofer there. Lucas, did you want to share or say something? Go ahead, Director.
No, thanks, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. I mean, a couple of things. So I think of the items that have been, first of all, the comments that have been made so far, totally agree with both directors and their comments so far. I think, I think there's kind of the like two track, like there's the continued virtual sort of engagement side of things. And then there's like post virtual, when we're able to be back in person. And so absolutely a board retreat, I think is essential, especially with so many new board members. I really appreciate the sort of the, board buddy system. That's, I think, going to be, or could be a really useful tool. Maybe there's an ability for some smaller group, sort of one-off discussions. I mean, I get the board workshops, that's important. And I certainly, but maybe there's like, I think staff has sort of done some of this where there's there was the orientation, of course, for new directors, but say there's a discussion specifically on RENA, right? And how does it affect, and you bring a subset of the board, maybe some new folks, maybe some existing folks in for that, just again, opportunities for people to be in the same Zoom space for some thought, sort of clearinghouse, sort of thought exchange, that kind of thing. I mean, I think we're, so it's not mandatory, just see if there's interest there. But I think, we're going to be probably in this somewhat of a disadvantage until we get to be able to be back in person. I mean, I think so much of the, building of relationships on this board, certainly, especially with as many members as there are, but also on even just all the boards we sit on, is the interpersonal interpersonal sort of conversations and reactions and things that we have when we're literally together. So it's obviously much more difficult to do that. I also really appreciated Tom's suggestion around just the, just trying to call people up on, and have, or, on any given issue. I think it's important to, I think it's a little bit more than just the sort of the one by one buddy system that is being instituted, though. I mean, it's, I know, like, for example, this morning during the policy committee, had a little bit of dialogue in the chat with a couple of the different directors who we haven't seen each other in a while, right? Or even at board meetings. And so just sort of raising some of the issues that were happening in their jurisdiction, it was like a way to connect with them, things that I've been seeing in the news or whatever else. So, and it just was, it's just nice for us to be able to try and have those touch-ins, I think, with each other. But I think absolutely, whether it ends up being virtual or in person, I think a board retreat is super, super important for this this group to, especially with so many new members. So apologize for the sort of repetitiveness of some of the comments that are somewhat in the staff report as well too, but I appreciate the direction that staff's going in and sort of the thoughts thus far. And And my sincere apologies. I have to unfortunately jump off in a minute here to go to a work-related call. So, but thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Lucas. Appreciate it. Other thoughts, follow-up, dialogue?
For the chair, Bonnie, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Sean.
Jay actually raised his hand. He figured out how to do that, but
Well, you've got the microphone, so we'll let you continue.
all right, yeah.
Go for it.
Reiterate a lot of what has already been said. You know, Don talking about connecting the dots and the connection, and Tom with the importance of the social aspect. Lucas backed that up. I also agree. I tell you, we're all politicians. We understand the importance of connections and networking and interpersonal relations and how we can use that to leverage to get things done. It's just as important here. And I would love to be able to be a part of a retreat of some sort to help facilitate that. And, we talked briefly today about connecting dots and the connections. I think as far as for the new members and an onboarding process, it would be a great idea. Some of it might be obvious and you can look things up on different websites and whatnot, but if we had perhaps a way to assist them into connecting the dots, how you get, we all have interest in our individual jurisdictions. We also, by virtue of our position on SACOG, we have an interest in a regional benefit. However, when we've envisioned a project, we have an idea for a project, I think it'd be very beneficial to, if it's a 1 or 2 page, even if it's a decision tree type thing, to explain what SACOG's, in a visual way, I know it works for me, SACOG's role in making that happen. There are a lot of other agencies and other things that are involved, but what can we do, again, by virtue of the position on SACOG, to get an idea from, you're running around, and I would love to see this happen. I think there might be a role for SACOG, you kind of, cutting the teeth of the idea, but how to go from, the teeth cutting to ribbon cutting. How do we get there? And what are the options along the way? And just allow them to understand what their role is. And when we do these different programs and things, they all start sounding similar after a while, and to where you can link it up to know that their role in moving that direction along, moving that path through that path. So, what that may mean, I don't know, but this is just the thought.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Bonnie. All good suggestions. And I think I'm in the same place as Mr. Saylor on a lot of this. I think if we could involve people in talking about projects that they're working on or have been successful with and what lessons they've learned, I think that would be really helpful. It's a way certainly to bring them into the board because they all have something to offer. And I would think about it as, maybe a series of a dozen of these once a month, at breakfast time, and let's take advantage of Zoom. So, it can be an hour, from 9 to 10 or 8 to 9 in the morning, and the first Friday of every month or whatever that looks like, but where we can expect that there will be, and get people to sign up for them moving forward so that it's an expectation. So you could do both the things of, what's the content and getting to know people a little bit better.
So just to follow up on that, Jay, sort of an idea of maybe somebody, whether it's a new person or maybe a new director, or it could be a director who's been around a little while, who's had a project in their jurisdiction that they could just share a little bit about. This is who we are. This is what we went through. This is where we got to. I think about Live Oak actually, and they got the highway built there, right? Or they're in the process or something, right? That's terrific. It was a lot of hard work. How did they get there? It's a small jurisdiction. And that allows us to learn about projects in other regions and also get to know one another. Lessons.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It could be projects, it could be larger issues. I mean, my fallback would be, you want to learn what we're doing around youth issues in Sacramento, I'll talk about, we've got, 10 different things that we're doing. And if this is important to you, bring in and we'll talk about that. So I think it could be as specific as a highway project, but it could also be, what are you doing on housing in Folsom? You want to build 10,000 units. What does that look like? So.
Great suggestion. David, I thought I heard you want to jump in, David Sander. I'm not sure.
Yes, sorry, I lost video. It's all SACOG's fault. I was on their website messing around and my computer locked up. So thank you, James. But in reality, I totally agree with what Jay just said and my former colleagues. And I just want to add on that, expertise now is much more reachable because people do not need to travel to Sacramento and spend 3 days to talk to us. They can do so by this wonderful technology that usually works. So I would just open it to that as well. The fact is, when you come to the SACOG board, particularly if you're a new member, this is a highly technical organization. None of us were elected to do this for our primary duty. So a lot of people can sort of sit by, vote yes on everything that they seem they should have to vote yes on and not really engage. And if that happens, it's a loss for the organization, a loss for the jurisdiction, a loss for the region. So part of our job always has to be education. And good news for us is there's a ton of stuff we can learn more about that is all related to our mission here at SACOG. So I would just encourage us to think not only internally about what we can learn from each other, but also externally, the sort of expertise we might be able to get for an hour, as opposed to the previous requirement to bring someone in as a speaker.
Thanks, David. And actually to follow up on that, right, because we have opportunities to have board workshops, which is definitely educational opportunity, which I think are very helpful. And as long as we keep our board meetings not too long, I've really enjoyed them. There have been some excellent speakers that have really gotten me to think about things I wouldn't have considered necessarily had I not heard from that speaker this past year.
Yeah, there were speakers like we had a speaker last year on the missing middle of housing.
Right.
It was absolutely brilliant. And so many directors left that meeting and just stood around afterwards talking to each other thinking that was just an awesome talk. I wish I could hear that 3 times,
Right.
Well, now with Zoom, if it's all recorded, you can.
And that's a really good point. So, there's opportunity to have board workshops. There's also the informal board lunch sessions that it looks like we're going to return with James on lunar or transportation issues. So I think that's, and we should really encourage people to participate in those, right? To learn, to take the opportunity to learn as much as possible. Stop there. Other comments, other thoughts? I mean, it does sound like if we could pull something off, an opportunity to have some type of board treat would be terrific. And I would love to see that happen towards the end of the year if we could pull that off or start planning something for that. Or maybe it is a very short sort of like what we did to San Diego, or a combination of such.
Can I raise another issue? And I realize the time may be winding down here, but I've really appreciated, many of you over the years have told me, and some of the folks that are on the call today, I love being on SACOG. It's really interesting. I think Director Sanders just said this. It's highly technical, and your staff is wonderful. They know a lot, but half the time I don't actually know. I don't quite follow what they're saying, and I'm not sure what it is, basically the essence of what you want me to do, right? What is it? I know this sounds very simple, but I do think this is a problem in public agencies. And when all of you are on 20 to 25 different boards and commissions and often have other jobs. So I guess I'm just making the plea, and I think our new members have been pretty good saying, please no acronyms, please explain this, slow down. But I'm making a plea for all of you to make sure that we're right sizing, if you will, our presentations and what we're giving the entire board, and being a bit of a, ear to the ground on this. And I wonder, do we give you the right level of detail for you to even go back to your fellow supervisors and council members and, engage them, right? I always think there's another 80% of the electeds out there that aren't in the board meetings each month, and Agree Means Go has been a great, again, opportunity to engage many of them who are not on the SACOG board. And I know those report outs at your local boards and councils are sometimes a whirlwind of everything that you do, but just a couple of thoughts. I had questions on the floor.
Thanks, James. Don?
I'm going to mention a comment here in a second, but in response to James's points, I think perhaps having a very pithy short list of bullets
Try again, Don.
What's new, what's hot, what's happening might be helpful. I know you do a number of things already along those lines, but having something very concise that we could use to brief our colleagues on an ongoing basis might be helpful. The thing I wanted to touch on in addition is how we think of a region. And I think that so many people think of it as maybe some additive piece of multiple small jurisdictions create a region, but there's actually something different than the sum of the sum of the whole is more than the parts, that sort of thing, whatever that phrase is. But I think we might benefit from having some kind of conversations about how we define a region and how that fits with our mega region discussion, how it fits with our prosperity work, how it fits with our SACOG work, because it's an elusive but ever more important concept to understand as the unit of action shifts from small jurisdictions or state level action to regional focus for how we're ever going to get anything done for the people we serve. And it may be that we can consider some of our engagement work with board around how we define region. I know that parts of my county consider themselves to be a part of the Solano area. Solano and Yolo border, and we're right on the edge of Caltrans district, right on the edge of air quality. We've got a bunch of different ways of thinking about the region, and in some cases, the region that people live in is the Bay Area. And I know that in some parts of our region, we have more focus on of the core of the urban area than on other parts. And so I think just teasing out and having conversations about what region means for action and for analysis might have a role in some of this discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think I don't know, we have a lot of even new electeds. So not just new directors to SACOG, but new electeds. And if you come from a very rural area, you might forget, oh, but this all is interconnected. And why does it matter, right? Why does the region matter? Because I think sometimes, I know I've sat as city council, I just focused right here. We're all interconnected, and why is there value in it? Other thoughts? I really do like the idea of having sort of jurisdiction profiles, whether that's a project, a passion, something that somebody's worked on, allowing us to get to know one another a little bit. I think that's sort of a neat idea to allow information sharing, getting to know one another. Might have to ask somebody like Director Saylor to kick it off. But if others are interested in that, I'd love to hear from you. I was sitting here thinking, what might I do? But I think that might be a really neat way to start to get to know one another better, get to know the region better. Terrific idea.
We do, by the way, Chair Gore, have a little survey going out to our 12 new board members. It's supposed to be a little bit of this, kind of a fun, why'd you run for office? How'd you get to school when you were a kid? If you had a visitor to your jurisdiction, what would the first thing you'd show them be? So we'll see how it goes. Sometimes these are hard to get back, but we're trying to get all 12 of those And it's actually not public yet because we didn't actually want people to think about this as the public facing thing. It's really for all of you and for us just to get to know each other. So let's see how that exercise goes. But our excellent communication staff thought that up and have now sent it out to our 12 new members. Maybe we should send it to everybody so you all get the same questions. And I do, please do subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Current. And if you don't, please subscribe. And also just let us know how that we can't do it all in there, but it's supposed to be a bit of a newsletter for the region. And we really try to highlight local projects. We had an awesome Safe Routes to School project in Yuba County last issue that was picked up by somebody in Rockland on staff. Thank you, Lynette. And who said, I know this project, I know this community. The fact that you wrote about it shows that the region cares about this school and this area, and that really, it was impactful. So again, small things, but.
I agree that questionnaire should go to everybody, James. I don't know how Jay and Sean and Don got to school, so it'd be good to find out.
And it allows us to find out about one another to build connection, right? And when you realize there's something about somebody that's similar, it draws you together. But newsletter, what monthly newsletter, James? Did I really miss something? Because I don't know what news month.
It might be going to your junk mail folder. It's called The Current. It's SACOG's monthly newsletter, and we put it out once a month at the last day of the month, and it really is, it's not supposed to be about all the wonderful things SACOG does. It's really just supposed to be a highlight of what's happening around the region. We'll try to spam you, but we'll make sure you all get signed up for it.
And maybe mention it to the rest of the directors the next meeting, because I didn't know.
It's our best kept secret. It's our best kept
obviously. You try to do your
Darren,
best to communicate, and it doesn't always work.
I grew up in Wyoming, and I would just wait for a passing car so that I could grab a hold of the bumper and it would pull me along on the snow drifts and ice flows.
You literally walked to school in the snow.
Yeah, until a car came, and then I would, as I described.
Yeah.
All right. Other thoughts, suggestions? Really appreciate it. Appreciate the ideas and the input. All right. Public comment. Need to make sure I open up to any of our public who might want to weigh in and tell us we've got great ideas or we're off our rockers, but since most of them are staff, they probably won't do that. All right.
Don't see any public comment.
All right. Well, then let's go ahead and wrap up. I know we have a couple more meetings. We have May and October for strategic board meeting. Are there any other topics that we might like to discuss this next year? In May, part of our agenda will be to begin the annual evaluation of our executive director, but certainly there's room for other topics. So if you have thoughts about that now, let me know, or if something comes up that you'd like to discuss further, feel free to reach out to either James or myself and let us know. And if not, Jill says great conversation. So thanks, Jill. I guess she couldn't talk to us very well. She must be in a car. Wonders of technology, right? So if not, then thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you all for your leadership, past, current, and future leadership of this board. Really a terrific board, new members, a lot of new energy. I think you might have already experienced that. It sounds like Policy and Innovation had a robust conversation today. And it felt like when I sat on the Lunar Committee meeting last week that there's interest and engagement with the new members. So thank you for reaching out to the new members, doing the buddy system if you're a buddy. And I think I've made myself a commitment that I'm going to reach out to the new directors myself as well, so that I can try to get to know them and find out a little bit about more of them and encourage them to continue to participate. So with that, let's go ahead and adjourn, and we will see you all a week from Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.